Good afternoon, everyone. This morning we met with Attorney General Peter Neronha, the Rhode Island State Police, and we were delivered the news that the Attorney General will not be filing criminal charges in the collision that put Jamal Gonsalves in a coma and changed his and his family's life forever. We appreciate the Attorney General's consideration in meeting with us this morning to deliver the news in person. We appreciate his willingness to share and discuss the findings of the Rhode Island State Police investigation with us in such detail. We also respect that he was accountable to the family and was willing to hear their thoughts. That being said, the Gonsalves family has waited patiently for 81 days, and it is an understatement to say today that they are disappointed with the Attorney General's conclusions. While the Attorney General has closed his file, we will carry on. We will continue and we will get justice for Jamal. While the Attorney General was not satisfied that the evidence supported criminal liability, what we have seen and heard does support our conclusion. It supports the conclusion that the officers in the Providence Police Department caused the collision and are responsible for Jamal's injuries and the condition that he is presently in. Jamal is currently inpatient at Kessler Institute for Rehabilitation in West Orange, New Jersey, where they specialize in disorders of consciousness, and they are engaging him in an intense therapy program in an effort to wake him up. While Jamal is not in critical condition and is stable, it would be inaccurate to say that he is doing well. On October 18, 2020, Jamal Gonsalves was 24 years old, healthy, active. He had a great job that he enjoyed. He was engaged to be married to a woman that he had been with for 9 years. He was approved for a mortgage to buy their first house together. On October 18, Jamal was going south on Elmwood Avenue with his whole life in front of him, until two Providence police cruisers put him and his life on a different course altogether. Thank you to everyone for your support of Jamal and the Gonsalves family. Please keep him and them in your thoughts, and I'll take your questions.
Do you agree with the AG's conclusion, first of all, that Officer Anderson's cruiser did not hit the moped, and number two, that McFarland coming out was not intending to act as a sort of roadblock?
So first of all, on the collision with Officer Andres, we're still going to investigate that from our end, and we haven't had the access the Rhode Island State Police has had to the cruiser, the data, that kind of thing, so we're going to do our own accident reconstruction, so we will investigate that. With regard to McFarland and his actions, we don't agree with the conclusion that he was not trying to box Jamal in. Looking at the facts, the circumstances around it, what happened and when it happened, I think they were all on the same page. He pulled out of that street in an attempt to box Jamal in, exactly as Andre said.
Does the family believe criminal charges should be brought? Should have been brought?
Yes.
Are you satisfied with the finding that boxed him in, boxed him inside, respond to his altered his radio communication system? In other words, is there a possibility that there's more audio that we haven't heard?
Well, there's definitely more audio that we haven't heard. There's a lot of chatter. There was two channels that they were operating on, and the fact that they were all on the same detail, 4 officers, and Officer Andres said box him in on one channel, and the other 3 officers were on a different channel and didn't hear that. I don't know that I buy that, to be honest with you. So we have now, the Attorney General has provided us with throughout the whole file, and we'll be going through all those transmissions and broadcasts to find out.
Do you plan on filing your own lawsuit?
Yes. So that we expect to file next week. That will be filed in federal court.
Do you anticipate to sue the officers individually or the department or the city?
Yeah, it will be, basically it's through the officers individually, and then they were protected by the police union in the city of Providence in that regard.
After criminal charges, what sort of punishment, since they're not going to be charged criminally, does the family think that they should be disciplined in some way, and if so, how? Should they be fired? What do they think would happen?
Well, it's difficult to say. This is all very fresh for the family. We expected that there would be some type of charges today. We did expect that. Disciplinary-wise, the department has their hands tied somewhat by the Policeman's Bill of Rights, and that's pretty frustrating. Because there was a lot that was done wrong before the collision, after the collision. And, understanding that this is a difficult situation, lots of different cities are dealing with motorbikes and groups of people, and how do you police that? Understood, but they did so much wrong here. And afterwards, I think there's a lot that they need to answer for, be accountable to. So the public of Providence is what's different now after this. Are they training them how to use Narcan now? So when they put it on their belt, they actually know how to administer it? We'd like to know that.
Would you describe the Providence Police as incompetent in this situation with respect to Narcan, possible boxing? Does it appear that there is incompetence at play?
Is that a word I would use? We're talking about really the borderline of two words here: recklessness and negligence. Attorney General Noronha didn't think that it was recklessness to the level he needed to be able to prove, but I see negligence, so much negligence.
What about the civilians' negligence and responsibility?
Who's that?
The civilian,
What civilian are you talking about?
the one that was injured.
What's his name? You don't know his name? Okay, thank you, sir. Another question?
Jude or Mark, if you could answer this, can you just tell us a little bit about what those few hours that you were in there actually was like? What was that conversation, and what questions are you still working out with?
So it was a lot of information that they provided. I'm sure you saw a lot of it as well. It was Attorney General Noronha presenting a lot of it, the Rhode Island State Police presenting some of it, the accident reconstructionist, the person who was in charge of that, presenting to us, because we did have a lot of questions about specifically the officer that pulled out of Biscuit Street, and their conclusion that he didn't pull out of Biscuit Street in an effort to box them all in. In our opinion, he did exactly that. So there's a lot of questions about that, and it's an emotionally charged thing. We've been waiting a long time for this. Hopefully, now that at least we've gotten this step, we can start moving forward.
Jude, what are you going to seek in your lawsuit?
Well, it's damages. It's a civil case. This is a young man who's had his whole life derailed. A whole family that's had their whole life derailed. And how do you compensate for that? There is no time machine through the court system that allows us to go back and change it. So we have to operate in the system that we have. All we can do is compensate through that civil system at this point.
What about the timeline for the internal investigation? Any update on that on your end?
No, I haven't heard anything from the police department on any of that at all.
How frustrating was the delay in having this report today?
It was very frustrating. Yeah, I think that was particularly difficult. It just dragged. And understanding, like I said, we got a lot of information. They provided us with their files, and we're going to go through all of it. And it's a volume of stuff. I understand what they had to do and the depth of what they went into. But from our perspective, it hasn't been easy to sit and wait for that either.
Are the civil proceedings dependent at all on Leober and those proceedings, or is it or are you be able to? You know what I mean? Like, is the Leober decision going to factor into the civil suit at all?
No, not really, because we're operating with two different legal standards that we have to hit, and intent is a big part of what the Attorney General needed. And for us, it's negligence. If the officers didn't mean for the outcome to happen, there were certain things that they could have done to make sure that it didn't happen. They made mistakes, and that led to this. So that's the basis of our action.
And are you hoping to see changes in procedure going forward as well? Would that be part of the civil suit, or is that not anything that?
It's not generally part of the civil suit. I mean, I would like to see that as a member of the public myself.
Right.
Certainly, if I was ever in that situation, or my son was ever in that situation, I'd certainly like to know that the officers knew what to do at that scene. Or, they're talking about removing his helmet after he had a very bad head trauma, or administering Narcan. I mean, there was no indication that it was necessary. So those types of things, hopefully they'll clean up and address. Now that we all know about it and they all know about it, let's make sure it doesn't happen again.
So to clarify, there were no criminal charges charged today in the case of reckless driving, but there are other aspects of this case that you find there are many criminal charges that could be filed.
No, the Attorney General's decision is that this is now closed. There is no, on the part of really the two individuals that they looked at the most closely would be Officer Andres, the chase cop, and Officer Carlin, the Bissell Street officer. They did not find criminal liability on their part. But from our perspective, they are responsible for what happened. So even though they can't be criminally charged, they're civilly responsible and will be held as such.
What did you find out about today's announcement? We've got chaos in Washington. We've got Governor Raimondo leaving for Washington. This seems to be sandwiched in an area that would somewhat bury the lead. Is that a fair statement?
Possibly. We've been talking about when this decision was going to come, and to be fair to the Attorney General, we were told that this is to be expected this week and guaranteed by next week. Obviously, everything that happened yesterday in the Capitol, that's depending on your perspective, good timing or bad timing. But, hopefully the public here in Providence and Rhode Island has the attention on this case, because this could happen to anybody. Like we were saying, Providence police arrives at any accident. Hopefully they know what to do next time.
After the crash, there was a protest in Providence. What is the family hope the community's reaction is to this?
Well, I think Mark might be the better person to answer that question, but it certainly we understand people would be frustrated, like we are frustrated and emotional, but hopefully that they keep it peaceful, as has been done. And, as we had stated before, the protests that happen after night, the family will leave, and I'll leave that word in Washington.
Do you want to add anything?
Tia and Kendra as well, and the rest of Jamal's siblings. I mean, we think there was an unjust decision. There's a lot that they said that, to me, they still didn't say enough. I think just trying to charge them with just one officer they focused their investigation on, really. The question about what happened in the state and Washington yesterday, the timing of releasing this information, because they know news is going to push towards that more than over on this, and it kind of gives it to the public, and less with less of an impact and stuff. I mean, the public's seeing all that other stuff right now. But I mean, our son, why these cops, were all home on their holidays, under our pay, your pay, the Narcan that they use that you guys paid to put on their equipment and everything that they don't know how to use. That's things you guys should be upset about as well. I mean, you guys are paying for that just like we are. You're out here with a job, you got a tax dollar, then you're paying for that. You know, there's all kind of stuff, man. We're not happy at all. I mean, you know, got to travel to New Jersey, you know, and we can't even see him, you know, while all these officers were celebrating with their families under our bucks, you know. You know, what medical's going to cover and what they're not going to cover.
Is this the lawmaker? You're a lawmaker? You're a representative? You're the father? The kid that got injured?
Yeah, man.
All of this is connected. You're just saying what happened yesterday in Washington, D.C. and the standing down of the police officers not doing what they're supposed to do. African American, Spanish people, people with low income, all get treated like crap. And that was indicative of what you seen yesterday when that crowd stormed the Capitol.
Yeah,
There
which
was
has nothing to
nobody
do with
there.
my son right now, my man. So
It's all connected.
No,
it's all connected.
But right now we're
it's
talking.
much bigger. I got much respect
All right.
for you, but it's
Then let us
bigger
finish.
than that.
Let us finish talking about our
bigger
son.
than that.
All right,
It's
because
bigger
you're
than
doing
that.
just what the AG wanted and they wanted to do. Kind of smother our son's
Exactly.
information under that. So let's not
Exactly.
talk about that right now.
Exactly.
Mark, what do you need from your local community right now?
We need our community. What you all need too. What you need is for everyone to stand together and demand justice. You know, I mean, you can only fight, you know, one battle at a time. So right now, this is, I mean, if you look at everything, all the evidence and you know, everything, you know, my son has done in his life, you know, no criminal history. He's been with his fiance for 9 years, you know, starting at the age of 15. Everybody here wanted, they had, you guys, your parents, your grandparents, you all had a traditional, you know, idea of how you wanted to grow up and get married and have your family with your white picket fence and all that stuff. And our son, her fiance, and her, right now, all that's put on hold because our son, you know, is sitting in a hospital, you know, 3 hours away, a few states away, you know, not even able to cognitively make any decisions on his own. You know, can't walk on his own, can't do anything on his own. You know, he can move some body parts, but that's, you know, when we're talking about cognitively, about being able to consciously decide to do those things. You know? And this is all on the negligence of these officers. And the care falls on the negligence of the city and state. You know? Because they put these officers, they gave them their jobs. You know? They sworn them in. And then you guys, all of us, elected those people to swear them in.
Can you reiterate
So
your
think about all that during election seasons right now. When you're voting on your local selected elected officials. You know, what kind of job they've done. If this was your son, your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your neighbor. You know?
Can you reiterate your demands? The family's demands?
We want the ones guilty to be liable. And Tia, Kendra, I'm sure you guys, you know, they can answer those same questions.
Anything else that you guys want to add?
I just know that it's really difficult. My son is all the way in New Jersey, and we're fighting with insurance. They don't even want to pay. They think he could just walk out. and it's not possible. He is making improvements, but he has a traumatic brain injury. And we don't even know, we may have to take him home next week because my insurance does not want to pay for it. It's not that it's a little bit different, but you're almost better with state medical. You don't have state medical. He's still underneath my medical, which is sad that people with Medicaid or state insurance don't even have a job. Some of them do, but they have better insurance than a person that works every day, goes to work, and they don't want to pay for it. So that's my most frustrating thing, no matter what. And we won't have him in the nursing home. We will take him home, and it's a lot. And I want justice. Like you said, he's living his life, and my son is dealing with this all due to his negligence and consequences that he did to my son.
We have to
I'm very disappointed on how it turned out, but I almost set myself up for it because everybody said that, hey, criminally he wouldn't be charged.
Our last meeting with the AG, I could tell he prepped us that what today's results were going to be. You know, he let us know, not everybody's always happy with the decisions that are made. You know, he basically just prepped us for today. You know, now we're trying to worry about bringing him home, building a handicap ramp in a small apartment that him and his fiance was living in. You know, like, who's paying for all that? We have to pay out of our pockets. You know, the place was barely big enough for them to live in. Now we have to worry about a wheelchair being able to move through this place. Being able to transport them around with a wheelchair. We don't have a handicap van, handicap ramp, a door that's white, like none of that. You know, it's just so much to think about. We're upset about, officers not being criminally, charged, but it's almost like we're not even, that's not our top concern right now. Our top concern is this hospital talking about sending our son home, who's still, in a state where, it's sickening. It hurts. We're scared to death,
Well, clearly, from the Bike Life community, I want to say that, and not to interrupt what is going on here, we're going to stay calm in all this. We're not going to be riding on the streets. A lot of people are going to be thinking there's going to be a protest on Elmwood tonight. That's not going to happen. We are going to be looking to do an event on Martin Luther King Day to help raise funds for those exact expenses that we just talked about. But we don't have to wait till Martin Luther King Day. We don't have to wait till he actually gets discharged from the hospital and gets home. We can actually be proactive and actually make a commitment today to actually start to get some money together, because these insurance companies that I guess organized by politicians, or that are run by politicians, because I'm very aware that there are politicians that actually are on the board of some of these organizations. Maybe they can donate some money since they're in the donation phase right now. I know Gina Raimondo is going to be working with the Commerce Department. She's a very wealthy woman. Maybe she can donate some money to this situation since she hasn't taken the time to associate herself with this cause at all before this situation. So hopefully the community will come together and get involved. There's there's t-shirts they can buy, there's masks they can buy, there's sweaters that they can buy to help in bringing together some assistance financially for them. Your prayers, your thoughts are all welcome, and they love them, but really these people are hurting, and they're hurting not just psychologically, but they're hurting financially because these insurance companies are not willing to pay. Qualified immunity, the police union, all that stuff, we already know that was going to take time. This case isn't not closed. Just because the AG's done doesn't mean there's not a Department of Justice that can handle it. There's a U.S. Attorney's Office. There are other people that can handle the situation. Just because the AG said, look, my hands are washed, they broke into the White House, we don't know what to do with these people. No, we do know what to do. We need to follow the Constitution. We need to make sure that these people that are in the leadership roles uphold their oath. And that oath is to make sure that you deliver the Constitution to the people. And that Constitution states that you are not allowed to overreach and you are supposed to be punished just like everyone. We are all citizens. We are all citizens. We should all be punished like citizens. And so this man needs to be punished. Clearly, his leadership needs to be dismantled. Hugh Clemens, Stephen Power clearly have not done their job. They need to be eliminated. They need to be eliminated from their positions. They need to go work somewhere else in another state because clearly they're not doing their job. So, most importantly, like I said, what the community can do is they can make donations. They can make donations to the causes that are involved. You know, this is important that we focus on the health first, and then we can focus on the criminal charges. But we are going to criminal charges.
Let's find out what else.